I've got two metal detectors here I wanted to go over today. I've got the Minelab X-Terra Elite at $479, and I got the Minelab Manticore at $1,799. That's a $1,300 difference between the two. So what does that $1,300 get you? In this video, we're going to do a deep dive into each of these metal detectors, and we're going to go through the menus and features of each. Then we're going to take them out in the field, and we're going to do some depth testing and some separation tests and see if there's little or any difference that can be determined between these two, and see what $1,300 gets you. So both of these metal detectors that I've got here by Minelab are simultaneous multi-frequency. Now, simultaneous multi-frequency was introduced in the market approximately 1991. Minelab came out with the Sovereign, Fisher came out with the CZ6. There have been other companies that have introduced models over the years, and now recently in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a lot of simultaneous multi-frequency metal detectors come out. I think Minelab was mainly the pioneer in that. They did the most research and development, had the most metal detectors up until recently that offered simultaneous multi-frequency. And so you might be wondering, what's so special about simultaneous multi-frequency? So basically, simultaneous multi-frequency allows you to use your metal detector in more environmental conditions than like a single frequency machine. So single frequency machines, you usually got to optimize your frequency for the objects that you're hunting for. So if you're hunting for coins, you would want a lower frequency. If you're hunting for gold or smaller or lower conductive targets, then you would want a higher frequency. Well, simultaneous multi-frequency resolves that by operating in two or more frequencies at once, so that you've got a gamut over the whole range, both low conductors and high conductors. And then it also allows you to operate in environmental conditions that include like salt or high mineralization, where single frequency metal detectors for the most part didn't do well in those environments. All right, between these two detectors, there are a lot of common features that come on both this $479 and the $1,700 model. Now keep in mind, these were retail prices. There might be sales, and you could obviously buy one used. So some of the common features that they share are they both have backlight, they both have vibration, they both are waterproof, they both share the same wireless headphones. They have wireless headphone capability. There's this bigger, bulkier pair that you can buy, or they've got a more slimmed down version that both of these detectors will hook up to. They both have internal rechargeable batteries, and they actually both share the same charger. Now, the one difference between the two is charge time. So the Elite charges in about 5 to 6 hours and has a runtime of 12 to 14 hours, whereas the Manticore has a charge time of about 7 hours, and you're usually going to get between 8 and 10, and most of the time I'm getting only about 8 hours on that machine. They both have depth gauges, they both have pinpoint, they both have the horseshoe option, which basically is you click it and it opens up the whole screen to where you accept all targets, and when you turn it on, it'll go to whatever you've got preset as far as discrimination patterns go, or if you don't have a discrimination pattern, it'll just notch out the iron part of that. They both have a battery indicator, they both have pinpoint function, they're essentially the same, and they share the same target ID scale, which kind of makes it nice as far as the 0 and up. So 0 and up, it's the same target ID system where you'd only have to learn what a dime, what a nickel, what a quarter sounds like. Below 0, the Manticore actually has a wider range of target IDs, whereas the Elite does not. It only goes down to, I think, 16. The Minelab Manticore actually goes to -99. So it's got an expanded iron target ID system if you're into, digging some of the iron targets that are out there. Again, one thing I wanted to discuss with these machines is the ability for you to buy aftermarket coils. Now, there are a lot of coils already available, and the thing about the X-Terra Elite is that it uses all of the Equinox series coils. So anything that's been created for the Equinox, in addition to what you can get for the X-Terra Elite now, you can use on this machine. So that's going to put you in a situation where you've got all the way from a 5x8 coil for small junky areas, up to the stock, or the Minelab produced 12x15 coil, but in addition to that, there's an 18-inch coil, round coil that Coiltex makes. Now that's the same for both the Manticore and the X-Terra Elite. The 18-inch, the 12x15 are both available. The 5x8 is available for both machines. You can get an 11 for both machines. The one thing that's different, as far as I know, to the date now, is that the Manticore offers a 9-inch coil that you can get, whereas I don't think that's available for the X-Terra Elite or the Equinox series yet. And I could be wrong on that. There could have been something that came out recently that I'm not aware of. But some of the big differences that you're going to see, which we'll look at out in the field, is on the Manticore you got the 2D screen, ID screen, where it shows your ferrous limits, and then the section in the middle or the center line where your targets fall based on that. Now you can't always just dig something on the center line on this machine. It could fall in different places and still be a good target, so keep that in mind. One of the big differences between the two is the Manticore's gold prospecting mode, and that in and of itself can be worth $700 to $1,000 based on you just having to go out and buy a dedicated gold prospecting machine. And I've tested this machine against a number of them, and it's pretty up there as far as performance go in comparison to some of these other models that are out there, like the Garrett 24K and the Minelab Monster, Gold Monster. So then the other big differences you got is just sheer ability to do adjustments on the Manticore. Now we'll go through some of those out in the field, but the Manticore is far more adjustable than the Elite is. But the question is, do you need that in order to make the finds that are out there? Is it really going to benefit you? So we're going to go out in the field now, and we're going to take a look at a couple of different things that are on the Manticore that aren't on the Elite. And so the first thing that we're going to look at is the number of search modes that are available between the two. Okay, on the X-Terra Elite, we've basically got 6 search modes. So we start with Park, and we've got 1 and 2 available. In Field, we've got 1 and 2 available. Now in those 2 modes, basically 1 is optimized more for high conductors, 2 is optimized more for low conductors, and then we get to our beach. So beach 1 is just general, and beach 2 is going to be for, like, if you wanted to hunt in the water. For this purpose, we're actually going to hunt in Park 2. Now there are going to be a lot more search modes on the Manticore. So on that, we've got all-terrain general, all-terrain fast, all-terrain low conductors, all-terrain high conductors, all-terrain trash reject, beach general, beach low conductor, beach deep, beach surf and seawater, and then gold field. Then we're going to go back to all-terrain general because that's what we're going to use when we do these tests in the field. Okay, and then the other thing we want to look at is recovery speed. So the Manticore has got a wider range of recovery speed than the X-Terra Elite does. We'll go through that now. So the next thing is recovery speed. Now on this we only got 3 levels of recovery, and I usually run mine on 2. Recovery speed, we've got anywhere from 1 to 8 on the Manticore. For this purpose, we're going to leave it at 5 when we do the test. All right, and then another thing we wanted to look at is the adjustability of iron bias, or in this case ferrous limits, on the Manticore versus iron bias on the Elite. They are different. The Manticore allows you a little more adjustment, but we're going to take a look at that now. Your ferrous limits. Now there are different ferrous limit patterns that you can save, or you can go into the preset and you can make adjustments. So this is the upper, and to make an adjustment you would move the side arrow keys to go up or down. We're going to leave it stock. And then to get to your lower limits, you push the down arrow, and you've got this where you can adjust the lower limits up or down. I usually leave mine on 2 or 3, but in this example we're just going to leave it at 3. And if you hold it down, you'll go into your ferrous limit. Now ferrous limits are different than the Manticore. This is a adjustment that adjusts both the top and bottom level, basically discriminates against or is iron biased against both your nails and your bigger iron. Usually if you want to knock out the bigger iron, you're going to have to go higher on the iron bias scale. I usually leave mine at -1 because I like to hear everything and do everything that way. All right, and then the other thing I wanted to take a look at is audio options. So the Manticore has a lot more audio options than the Elite does, and we're going to take a look at that now in the field, or your different tones. So on this one, we've got 1, 2, 5, all tones, and then you got depth. Now, all tones and depth and these others were available on the Manticore, but the thing with the Manticore is you can actually go in and do further adjustment on them where you decide what the pitch is and stuff like that. Then we've got our tone options. So there's a number of these, and you can go in and edit these as well. So I like to hunt in one region all tones on most of my metal detectors, but you can do 2 tones, 5 tones, 1 single tone, 2 tones, 5 tones again. Now the difference between these is that each of these tone banks is where you've got this straight line, each of these tone banks is just like a solid different sounding signal. Now if I was to go to 5 tone all regions, I could go in here and I could actually adjust the pitch to raise within each one of those segments. Now I don't necessarily mess around with that much. If you wanted to do that and you've got a Manticore and you want to go back, or you want to go into the user manual and see how that works, feel free to do that, but I generally just hunt one region all tones, and that's kind of where I'm going to leave it and not really get into this other information unless you actually buy one and you want to do that yourself. Audio themes. So on the Manticore we got a number of audio themes. We've got normal, enhanced, depth, and prospecting. And then within most of these you can go in and you can adjust the threshold level that's within that audio type. You can adjust the pitch, and you can adjust the profile. Now the profile, what that does is you can change between simple, rich, and medium. Rich is going to be where a deep target sounds soft, a shallow target sounds softer. Medium or simple is going to be where all targets sound the same, and then you've got medium where it's kind of in between. Deeper targets will sell soft, but not as soft as when you're in like the rich mode. I prefer to use the simple profile, just because I don't want to miss anything when I'm going along. So that's totally up to you what you use as far as that goes. And I also like the normal audio thing, but there's these other ones that, you know, if you wanted to change the way the metal detector sounds, you can do that just based on your preference. And then the noise cancel function between the two of them are pretty close to the same, but we'll take a look at that now. Noise cancel on this one is you push the plus or minus check mark to do a noise cancel. It'll land on the quietest channel. And then if you held the check minus mark down, it would do a continuous noise cancel until you find the channel that you want. I'll give you an example of that. So it'll run through, it says 2's the quietest. Okay, so it's going to say 2's the quietest at this point. So then we've got noise cancel. So now noise cancel on the Manticore, we can go manual noise cancel, make an adjustment, or we can hold this button down for, just push it, it'll do a noise cancel and stop on the quietest channel, or we can hold that button down, it'll do a continuous noise and you can stop on that, and that's going to be your quietest channel. Okay, ground balance between the two is essentially same. They've got about the same adjustments. Well, let's take a look at that real quick. You can ground balance manually, you can ground balance and pump it, you can ground balance and do tracking, a lot the same as with the Manticore. Then we've got ground balance. You've got manual, you've got automatic where you pump the coil, and you've got tracking. All right, and then one of the options that's a lot more adjustable on the Manticore than that is on the Elite is your ability to notch out or reject different targets. There is way more adjustability in the Manticore. We're going to take a look at that now. I'm not going to get into a deep dive into it, but just show you what's available on the Manticore versus what's available on the Elite. Next thing on our menu is notching out like our targets that we want to reject. Now the difference between this machine and the Manticore is that this machine takes out 4 segments at a time, whereas the Manticore you can do that individually. The next thing we got is disc patterns, and we've got one where you can go in and make custom. Now if you go in and do a custom pattern, you can move individual digit segments and notch out one item at a time. So for this purpose, we're just going to be on all metal. to switch between multi-frequency and the one single frequency that the X-Terra Elite offers, you hit this zigzag button. There's multi, there's 15. I usually hunt in multi. And then up here we've got whether or not we're going to use multi-IQ or single frequency. Now the Manticore has multi-IQ and it also has single frequencies, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 40 kilohertz. I most of the time hunt in multi-frequency. Okay, next thing you got is your Ferris volume or Ferris tones. So first thing is volume. You can go in and you can adjust the volume up or down to make it louder or softer. You got Ferris pitch, which you can go in and you can change the pitch of the Ferris volume from a low sound to a higher sound if you wanted to do that. And then finally you've got stabilizer. Now this is something kind of unique. Stabilizer is where you can go in and reduce the falsing off of nails and other iron targets like wire and stuff like that. You can adjust this up or down. I usually leave mine on 0, and then you've also got this filter that you can turn on or off. Well, in order to use that, you've actually got to have the stabilizer at least one to do that, but I never use it, so that is an option though. Okay, so you can see that the Minelab Manticore is a lot more adjustable than the X-Terra Elite, but how does that affect performance in the field? Is that adjustability really needed in order to get optimal performance in the field? We're going to go out right now. We're going to go through the test garden where I've got some buried targets. I'll try to go over that in the field, but let me just tell you what I got. So basically what I've got is a 6-inch dime, 7-inch dime, 8-inch nickel, 9-inch quarter, and then I've got a small pewter button, which would be representative of something like a small gold coin, buried at 5 inches, and we'll go over those targets in the field and show you how they compare, each of these machines compare over those. Okay, so what I've got buried here is I've got I believe this is a 6-inch dime, 7-inch dime, 8-inch nickel, 9-inch quarter, and then over here I've got a small pewter button, which I had to rebury because I had it at 6 inches and nothing would get it. Now I've got mineralized ground, so some of these depths aren't going to sound too impressive to you, but in mineralized ground that's quite good, because in the past, before multi-frequency came out, I was unable to get a 6-inch dime with any sort of consistency. So I believe this is the 6-inch dime over here. We're going to start with that first with the X-Terra Elite, then we'll grab the Manticore and go over it, and we'll go through all these targets. Okay, here is the X-Terra Elite on the 6-inch dime. Had to do a noise cancel, ground balance. We reduced sensitivity to 23 and recovery at 2, and we're in Park 1. So that's the 6-inch dime. Is up averaging a bit. Okay, we're going to start this test over the 6-inch dime with the Manticore. We're going to run our sensitivity at 21. All other settings are the same as when I was going through the menu. Here's the 6-inch dime. So up averaging quite a bit, but still clearly a high conductive target there that you would dig. Here is the 7-inch dime with the X-Terra Elite. Target's kind of all over the place, but I think you would agree that that is a target that you would probably dig. Here's the 7-inch dime with the Manticore. Same kind of thing. Clearly a high conductive target there that you're going to dig, but it's not consistent with what a dime ID should be. Here is the 5-inch or the 8-inch nickel. Now what we're going to do on this, we're going to go to Park 2 because it's a low conductor. Still struggling with it, so let's change that back to Park 1 and see what happens. Probably worse than Park 1. So that's kind of a no-go with the X-Terra Elite. Here is the 8-inch nickel with the Manticore. I believe there's some iron next to this hole somewhere, but we're getting a chirp on that. It is up in the iron level, but you know, you might stop and dig that. And we got the 9-inch quarter here. Definitely getting that. It is a little high for a quarter, but I think you'd agree that that is a target you would dig. Here's the 8-inch quarter with the Manticore. Clearly a softer signal, but I think if you got on that, because it's mostly consistent, you'd dig it. And then over here we've got the pewter button. We're going to change to Park 2 on that because it is a low conductor. And then here is the pewter button I mean, at 5 inches. Pewter button out of the hole reads 25. So this is pretty close. I think you'd definitely dig that. Okay, so now that we've gone over the depth test in the field, you can see that the Minelab Manticore does have a slight advantage over the X-Terra Elite in certain situations. So now we're going to go out in this test garden that I've got that's actually targets that are buried in iron. And what I did was I just picked an area that I knew had a lot of iron in it, in a vacant field next to my yard, and I went out there and I basically drilled holes down in the ground 3 inches deep, dropped dimes down in them randomly, and then placed golf tees to mark them. So I've got 4 targets that we're going to go over, and they're really hard to get. And with these stock coils that we're going to use, I'm not even sure that we're going to be able to get any of them. But we're going to go out there and we're going to test that and see if the Manticore has an advantage over the Elite, even with the Elite using a smaller coil. So let's go out there now, we'll take a look at that. X-Terra Elite on target 1, we've moved the recovery up to 3, and we've reduced the sensitivity down to 21 so that we don't get any faulting. So here's target 1. Let's turn the horseshoes on. So maybe that one direction, but it's pretty sputtery. Here's target 2 with the X-Terra Elite. Oh yeah, no go there. Here's target 3. Here's target 3 with the X-Terra Elite. Okay. Here's target 4 on the X-Terra Elite. Yeah, pretty much a no-go. Okay, on the Manticore, we're going to turn the sensitivity down to 19. We're still going to run ultra in general. Recovery, we're going to run at 7 though, and we're going to leave everything else the same. So hard to see here, but there's a golf tee down here that marks. It's right there. Marks just one target. So this is target 1 with the Manticore. Pretty clear right there, but as you turn, you kind of lose it. And target 2 is here. So this one's pretty tough. All right, then here's 3. This is probably the easiest to get of all of them. And part way around, and then the last one is right here. You know, I mean, most of these, I don't even know if you dig them, but it's... All right, so now that we've gone out in the iron test garden, you can see that with these big coils, it's difficult for both machines to get. But obviously, the Manticore showed a little bit better performance on that one target than the Elite did, and so in that regard, I would say that the Manticore probably is a better machine in that situation. But again, If you put a 5x8 coil on both of them, there may not be any difference, but that's something you'd have to look at, you know, later on when you get the machine and you go out. I'm sure that the 5x8 coil will make a huge difference on that particular test, but as far as stock coils go, I feel like the Manticore won that one. All right, now that we have gone through all the features, the menus, and the performance in the field on these machines, I mean, personally, I feel like the X-Terra Elite at $479 is a far better value than the $1,799 machine. Other than the fact that if you're a gold prospector, this is going to be the machine to go with, or if you want to do gold prospecting. But I mean, in my personal opinion, unless you're really into tweaking adjustments on like your audio and your ability to notch out certain targets, and I can see where it would be an advantage in some situations on some sites, I feel like the X-Terra Elite is a really good performer against the Minelab Manticore. That's just my opinion. And you know, if you're getting into metal detecting and you don't feel like you've got to spend, or you don't have a lot of money to spend, then obviously this X-Terra Elite at $479 is right up there with the best of them as far as going out on the field goes. I feel like you could go out there and 95% of the targets that you are interested in finding, you're probably going to find with this less expensive machine. Unless, like I said, you're into gold prospecting and you want to get a machine that will do that, then obviously the Minelab Manticore is going to be better. Not saying that the X-Terra Elite won't find gold, but the Minelab Manticore with its dedicated gold prospecting option on it is going to find smaller gold than the X-Terra Elite in most circumstances. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope that helps you out, and I hope to see you on the next one. So thanks for watching.